Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on another wonderful Wednesday edition of Talk Today as we ask you to call and share your thoughts. It's going to be open line until 1 p.m. Then 1 o'clock, get a chance to talk about the anti-bullying efforts. So hopefully we'll have that conversation. But between now and then, we want you to be a part of the conversation. We want you to not just feel invited and included, but without you, it won't be anything. So 949-8037 or a toll-free call at 1-800-534-8255. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for sharing your thoughts with us. Thanks for weighing in and giving us your opinion. And we want to maybe ask a few things of you. In particular, have you been watching the proceedings within the Legislative Assembly? Is there anything in there that has either, got your attention like you never had it before? Or is there, as one or two have said, well, what's the point? End of the day, they can change the name to the Parliament, but until they become independent, it's still really just a Legislative Council. No, I don't think the lady that said that comment to me in passing was trying to be disparaging. She just saying that if we look at the end of the day, we're still an outpost. We're still a territory. We're still subject to the motherland. And she says we either need to get on board with that or begin to chart the course to independence. But recognizing, even as an independent nation, you're still going to have to be subject to international obligations or be sanctioned if you fail to, toe the line, as it were. Now, she used some other choice words, not expletives, but perhaps inflammatory. So what do you think? She said, for instance, many of us have been up in arms about the regimen. And, I guess in a sense, as she shared, I can relate to it. Maybe it's the process, maybe it's the timing, not just the financial obligations that they may come at a particular time when we may be facing unprecedented and untold expenses going forward to keep the economy in the country afloat, to supporting our people. But she said, an army, a regiment, a military is not what most nations, desire. Now, are we going to chart a different course? Are we going to look at, say, Costa Rica as an example? And I think I should probably do a little bit more, in-depth reading that. But she says we either need to figure out who we are and what we want, or we need to follow the instructions of those who have either been elected to lead or appointed to dictate. Now, your thoughts, 949-8037 or toll free at 1-800-534-8255. And if you don't mind the small sort of gesture on the part of Talk Today to say thank you for listening, we would like to show our appreciation for you by showing our support, our continuing, unwavering support for the Seafarers and the Seafarers Association. They have their annual, event. We have, made a small donation. We've acquired a handful of tickets or two. And we would like to say to some of our listeners, call us up and we would like to give you a ticket. Now, I'm reassured since we purchased the tickets that if you win one, whatever prizes, that ticket wins, it's yours. No strings attached. and it's eligible. So the seafarers did not give it to us complimentary as a marketing tool. They haven't asked us to do this to promote it, but I think every single person in this country recognizes and respects the Seafarers Association, values the contributions of our seafarers, not just, way back when that was probably, the only option many had. Not just the contributions to our economy, to our own personal lives that provided food on the table, a shelter over our heads, gave many of us education, gave us an opportunity to, become, business people, to become, that thing that we are today when it comes to the financial success. But they still, to this day, continue to make a significant contribution to our country. From the educational grants to physicians for continuing their studies, to supporting healthcare, to lots of other things. And, if some of us seem to be, very, very, very much indebted to them, seem to be very much enamored by their service and sacrifice, well, it's probably justified. So, caller number 3, Mr. Fox, what do you think? We could provide them with a ticket just for nothing. We could play a simple game, It's sort of like, one of those games where you put 3 balls in the air and try to make sure that, you keep the red ball from dropping, or you make sure that the white ball, bounces when it does, whichever. Playing a game of pool, which one are you going to sink first? Well, number 3. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255. Simple rules. You dial the number. Mr. Fox answers. We talk to you, and you'll know whether you won 2 or 3. If you're the third one, you get a ticket. Chance to win 5,000. Compliments of the Seafarers Association. We're honored to be able to support them. Honored to, and grateful to say thanks to our listeners by offering you a ticket. Nothing else you need to do. We can engage in a conversation as the show goes on. We might even say to you, well, talked about something and offer up a ticket if you so choose. What a wonderful way to maybe go into the Christmas. Maybe there's that expense that you're not sure how you're going to meet. If it's for you, it's for you. 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255. Looking for that third caller for a chance to, be gifted a ticket to the annual draw of the Seafarers Association. And if you want to donate it, that's up to you as well. If you want to wrap it and give it as an early Christmas present to somebody and say, listen, I got this free, but it's yours, that's fine too. 949-8837 or 1-800-534-8255. Or, we can talk about anything else. Now, as I was sharing, all right, okay, let's go. Put them in order. I want to hear the first one. Good afternoon, welcome. Thanks for calling.
Yes, good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Listen, I am thankful. Sometimes I wish I was more helpful, but hey, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm wonderfully blessed.
Amen to that. Well, thank you for kicking off the game, and you're the first caller to be putting through. We take them in order, but don't go too far because there might be something else for you as well. No.
Okay.
Anything else you want to share with us?
Oh, nothing. Just we're grateful that the Cayman Islands is in such a wonderful place right now with the COVID-19 and everything else that's been going on.
Yes. Thank God, huh? Thank God.
Yes.
Amen. All right, well, don't go too far. Let's try the next caller. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good.
You enjoying yourself today, I hope?
Yes, I am, even though I wish I was in Nebraska.
Oh, hey, listen. There are 2 places that I think everybody would like to be. Cameron or West Bay?
Well, I prefer Nebraska right now.
I hear you. I think we all do, man. It's such a wonderful place, wonderful people. Maybe you'll get there soon.
Right there,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's what do you think is it about Cameron in particular that makes it so special, so appealing?
Well, I haven't been to heaven, but I tell you what, if it's like I would say, I'm hoping it's like next door to heaven.
I almost want to say something, but I don't know how to say it without sort of, playing your hand. But anyway, let me put it this way, and I'm not saying this to inflame anybody, but do you think as we continue, not just in the Cayman context of our development and population growth and, this thing from modernization and all those things, right? And looking at how the way the world is, especially now, do you think we're at risk of spoiling or ruining or changing the Cayman Islands in general, but Cayman Brac in particular, in such a way?
I hope not.
Mm-hmm.
I would like a little progress, but I hope we don't spoil it as how we have done Grand Cayman.
Mm-hmm. So then what do we do then? Because I think, like you said, we want progress. We want to make sure that, the best healthcare, roads, education, even the ability for the people that live there to get the things that they want and need without it being costing an arm and a leg. But what do we need to do to make sure that we don't, if I can use the word destroy it, I'm not trying to say that in a bad way, but I think we understand what we mean.
First of all, Sterling, I would say let us support the real local people, because we want to bring it back to like how Grand Cayman was years back. Mm-hmm. And you know what? We can do it. We have made this island what it was for all the other people to come in here and enjoy it. And I think we, the Caymanians, can enjoy Cayman Brac as good as we have enjoyed Grand Cayman in the last years. Mm-hmm. We had the older people taking their turn doing what they did, and they have made a beautiful island of this place. But you know what? Right now, it's really going to, I don't know. I can't even say the word here.
Well, you know what? I like your candid nature. I also like the fact that you are very respectful and responsible to put it out there. But maybe it's for us, all of us that live and work here, but in particular, those of us who can trace back ancestral roots to say, listen, just like how you got to nurture your garden and keep it weeded and watered, make sure that it's properly cared for. We need to do the same with our people in our country. So
exactly.
All right. Well, listen.
We can do it. We have done it before, and we can continue doing it.
Amen.
We just need to get the right people at the right time. Well,
seek ye first, right? But if we don't look for those people and those people don't offer themselves, then what's going to happen?
If people offer themselves, they offer it till they get in there, and then they turn the page over.
But maybe as a country, as voters in particular, we need to stay actively engaged. We need to remind them that it was the vote that helped them to get there, and now it's the...
Exactly.
All right. Well, again, it comes back to us. We can't throw our hands up in the air in defeat. We can't abdicate our responsibilities. We can't believe that just because it's this one or that one or the next, that they're better, or that they can do it on their own, or they have all the answers, or that they can act in a way without being held accountable. And I think that's maybe where we fall down. We just leave it to them, whoever they are, and then we point fingers. Yeah. All right. Well, you've been very encouraging and inspiring, so don't go too far, because we would like to maybe see if we can do this again in the next couple of seconds. But thanks for calling in. Thank you. You're most welcome. All right. We got our callers in the queue, but let's pause and take a break. No, let's not do that. Let's go to the phones. We have another caller? All right. What happened, Mr. Fox? You want a break? Woohoo. Well, still looking for that caller? Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Introducing the new Digicel Prime bundles, better than anything we've offered before, with more data than ever, more music on the music, more live sports on Sportsmax, more movies on Playgo, more video chats on BIP. With the new Digicel Prime bundles, it's never been easier to get more digital experiences, plus extra data. Get 50 gigabytes with a 7-day bundle. So much data, so much fun. Buy in My Digicel app today, the Caribbean's fastest mobile network. Digicel, better together.
My journey.
The Wesleyan Holiness Churches of the Cayman Islands would like to announce their 8th annual Cayman Islands District Wesleyan Youth Convention, running the 21st to Sunday the 25th of October at the Cradock Ebank Civic Center in Northside. Opening ceremonies on the 21st at 7:30 p.m. with the convention 7:30 p.m. nightly Wednesday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday, 10:30 a.m. on Sunday. This year's theme is Why I Am a Christian, #MyJourney, featuring home homegrown speakers Caitlin Bush, Latoya Francis, Donnie McCoy, and Gavin Lothian. Each night will also feature local talent from across the island of Grand Cayman. Don't miss out on this amazing opportunity to grow in your faith and have a great time doing so. Bus service will be provided nightly from Georgetown at the A.L. Thompson's parking lot. Call Cassandra Ebanks on 925-1930 or Pastor Conway King on 916-5372 for further information. Nightly services will also be live on the Northside Wesleyan Holiness Church Facebook page.
My journey.
Come and enjoy spooktacular fun for the whole family at Cayman Turtle Center's Halloween Family Fun Fest.
Saturday the 31st of October. Explore the wildlife, ride the water slide, splash in the lagoon, and enjoy fun games and activities for the kids.
The Halloween fun will take place from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. with carnival-style food and drink specials for the whole family.
Costumes are encouraged, and kids 12 and under in costume will get free admission.
It's Cayman Turtle Center's Halloween Family Fun Fest.
Saturday, October 31st. Don't miss it.
Over 60 years ago, we started as an insurance company to put people first. Today, with all of the challenges our world is facing, that mission has never been more important. Britcay is now CG Britcay. And though our name has changed, our purpose hasn't. We're still the same people-first company we've always been. And we're here for you, stronger than ever. CG Britcay.
Registration is ongoing for the Department of Tourism Pride webinars. The tourism industry is ever evolving. Stay up to date with the industry standards, best practices, and ensure you are the best ambassador for Cayman. The Pride webinars offer customer service, business acumen, history, and cultural classes. Webinars will run on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. To see the full schedule and register, visit pride.ourcayman.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. And thanks too for those earlier callers, and especially if I can say the excellent contribution to the caller right before the break. And maybe it's a very stark reminder that we need to look very closely at what we have, perhaps what we as individuals are doing. Are we hindering, hurting, harming? Are we helping? And perhaps recognizing the beauty and the bounty, perhaps we can do more to contribute to make it better. 949-8837 or 1-800-534-8255. All right. So that next call up in the queue who puts through and talks to us gets a ticket, compliments of Talk Today for the Seafarers Association annual draw. Chance to win, was it $5,000? I think it goes just as far in West Bay as it goes in Cameron. 5,000 CI dollars plus other prizes. Just a way to say thanks to you for listening. Just another way to show our public support for the Seafarers Association, the invaluable, undying contribution of our seafarers, the recognition of what they have done, and the example that they set by continuing to do their investment in our healthcare, in our education, in our community. I think we can take some pages from their books, even a few lines, as we would be, sort of regaled by their stories of their travels across the globe. Sometimes that's better than anything you can read or watch or hear from anybody else. But as they share with us, like I tell you, man, it's a wonderful thing. All right, next caller. You got a ticket if you want it. 949-8837, 1-800-534-8255. Now, as we were asking, perhaps have you been following the proceedings in the Legislative Assembly? Now, one individual has said that it's great now that we're increasingly getting, the opportunity to look, hear, if not only in person, but to be able to know what's transpiring in the Legislative Assembly. She was saying that it's good sometimes that as seemingly probably a part of the campaign strategy, she said, but probably a part of the perceived attempt at keeping the relevant constituencies informed. Some of the parliamentarians have been keen to send out information. Legislative assemblies in meeting, this is what is coming up, or this is one of the things. But she said it would be important, and perhaps she thought absolutely imperative, that sort of thing was taking place perhaps more frequently. And this was her suggestion. Hopefully I recall it correctly. If she didn't, she can send me a message and correct. But she said that at the risk of it being perceived as bias, at the risk of it being used as a tool to campaign and to influence part of our discussion, she said, one of the nice words that we talk about politics that we always put in, propaganda. But she said, either through GIS or some mechanism within the government structure, given, she said, her perception that under the Westminster model, the civil service is this independent, objective thing that exists to serve, as very best, the interests of the government of the day. So she said if that could be somehow, when the Legislative Assembly is in session, to be able to put out not just a press release saying, well, this bill is out for consultation, but a level of critique. Now she realizes that the failures on the part of the media generally to report on this. She realizes the resources that will have to be devoted. Perhaps it will have to stem from the interests of people to actually go listen to the report. But she says that if the Legislative Assembly, however we look at it, is making and amending laws, spending the country's money through the appropriations bill and the like, that would be important to know what's happening. Now, if you have this place where this information is readily available, that Legislative Assembly is meeting on this date, this is what the agenda looks like, order paper for the day is this, here are some of the laws, and can give you, at the very least, a synopsis of what transpires, perhaps even a detailed analysis of what it would mean. Now, she recognizes that for some would say, well, that's spoon feeding, but she thought, how do you develop an interest in the parliamentary procedure and the process if you don't give people an opportunity to avail themselves of what's transpiring? She says some would recognize that, well, that may be taken away from others, but then again, many entities may say they do not have the resource, the amount of people, they don't have the money, the equipment to devote to it. And if government is looking at civics education, this could be a tool that informs people. Well, what do you think? Let's go to the phones. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Sterling. How you doing?
Hey, good afternoon, man. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Just giving thanks that I'm alive and well and healthy. That's the most important thing.
Amen, man. Man, listen, I hope if I say this and it's embarrassing or offensive, you correct me, but hope you don't mind, man. You ran across my mind like yesterday and the day before, and I didn't reach out to you, and I thought, and I didn't even pray for you, man. Usually when you think about people, you should say a little quick prayer for them, but you've been on my mind, man, and I hope that isn't a bad thing.
Well, I appreciate the thoughts, obviously, and I think we should all try to exercise sometimes to be our brother's keeper and understand that what affects you in West Bay affects me in Savannah. What affects the person in Georgetown affects the person in East End. So we're all here together, and we're all trying to make sure that we try to create the best environment for all of us.
Go ahead, man. And listen.
One of the comments that I would like to make, and one of the things that I would like to highlight, obviously, this past week we've been hearing, at least I've been watching the CIG TV, watching the proceedings at the Legislative Assembly, and what really bothers me now, and I mean a lot of things do, but when we listen to the persons we elect to lead our country, when we listen to the persons we rely on to lead our country, whether or not we agree with them politically on everything, for any politician to feel offended by being talked about or criticized or being held accountable for certain things that people may not agree with, and then for politicians to use parliamentary privileges to go after those persons and talk about those persons in these parables that they use and utterances that they use on the floor of the House. I think that it's a gross waste of time and energy for any politician to address anything of any sort when it comes to public opinion. The public is going to have their opinion whether you like it or not, and I think that it's a gross waste of time to use the time in the Legislative Assembly to address those things and criticize members of the public. And I only say that because I listened to the Premier, who is the leader of the government, and I think that he should lead by example. And I think that it's high time that we set aside our emotional differences and take the emotions out of politics. I know we've said this on numerous occasions, but for him to suggest that persons in the public wants to wind back the hand of time to this mythical time where they can enjoy I think I'm trying to quote exactly what he said, the tinted of the rose tinted resemblances. Now, I just got this question to ask the Premier. How is it hard to comprehend that the people of the Cayman Islands want to see any development, any growth be resemblance of who we are historically? We need to be sustainable. We need to understand that whatever development and whatever progress we make in this island should be inclusive of all Caymanians, no matter what sector they work in. It should be mindful of Caymanians who intend to die here and be buried here, who are not gonna pack up their bags and run away because things got hard. I just think that it's high time that the Premier start taking a hard, strong look at his own behavioral habits and start to behave himself like a leader and someone who has respect for the general public, regardless if they're not in agreement with how he do politics. And I'm getting really sick of hearing politicians such as him and people from the leader side of the table criticize persons that don't agree with them. And it's unfortunate that we've used a gross amount of time. Two terms he's been the Premier in this country. 2 terms. And when he talks about all of the accomplishments and all of the things that the government has done, nobody will argue that they didn't do some good things. Sterling, I wouldn't argue that because then I would be a fool. But certainly, whenever there are things that has drastically affected a large block of people of our society whom felt the need to get together and express these concerns, who gives him the right to criticize those people?
Right. But as I listen to you, though, and I reflect on what I took from the caller prior to you when she was looking at, how do we make sure we don't, my words, don't destroy, what we have, right? Not a pointed comment at anyone in particular, but as you were speaking, what springs to mind is the quote attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt that talked about, great minds discussing their ideas, average minds discussing events, and small minds discussing people,
Right. Yep.
How do we get to a point where we, as you were saying, we use our office or position, we use our intellect and whatever resource to influence things for the greater good?
Well, I read in the article CNS printed or posted on their page where the Premier went on to say that he hear a lot of talk but no solution. Now let me just dissect this for a second, right? We're talking about a Premier who started schools and ran the country into a recession where framework for fiscal responsibility was imposed on us because of that reckless spending. This is the same Premier now. The school still hasn't been finished since 2007 when he started them. This is 2020. This is a long time. 13 years later, still haven't finished them. And then we talk about solutions. Let's talk about solutions. The government is this week debating a regiment that is going to further have expense to this country. Now, remember now, let us not trick ourselves and think that this regiment is something of urgency or priority, because we've never had a regiment at any point in any part of our history. Okay, that's number one. We have a country that is bleeding $25 million per month because of COVID. No control of theirs.
Additional 25 million, right?
Right. So
Okay.
here we are now talking about implementing a regiment because of natural disasters and all this other stuff. Now, as far as I know, the Cayman Islands have been through some of the worst storms ever to hit any landmass in history. And we're talking about from the 30s all the way up. Hurricane Ivan may have been recorded on record as a Category 5, but many of us would argue to differ with that opinion, because we lived it, we were here, we experienced it, we saw what it did to our country. But yet, we have a premier and his cabinet who is venturing down a road to further implement things that's going to indebt the country on an annual basis. Now, I never argue that Cayman doesn't need to have sophisticated border control and certain things. I am all for that, because I think that we should be able to afford it. Now, on the other hand of things, as opposed to criticizing people for not having solutions, please, Mr. Premier, and everybody in government and everybody who's responsible, who are the guardians of our gates, show us your solutions. Because certainly the economic boom and growth and success that we see now is not inclusive of the small man. It's not inclusive of the Caymanian who works 3 jobs and can't afford to pay his bills. Where is the Premier when he should, you know what he should be championing this week? He should be championing a new set of regulations to ensure that the compulsory items in this country that drives the cost of living up is being regulated, where the consumers, who is the mass majority of the lower spectrum of people, is able to pay their bills and not go under because the cost of living has tied a shackle on their ankles and throw them overboard in the deep end. The problem is that the Premier talking about solutions. Well, here's a solution, Sterling. Here's a very simple solution. Go in and fix the cost of living. It's not hard to do. And let me tell you how you can do it, Mr. Premier. You go in and make sure that the 2 major providers of fuel, which provides energy and food in our country, because everything has a fuel factor, is not allowed to clear their product on volume and not cost. You want to reduce the cost of living? Ensure that we know what they pay, to make sure that that is transmitted into a reasonable price at the pumps, at the food, at the energy company. Those things reduces the cost of living. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know this. Now, the Premier will argue that people like me don't know what I'm talking about because I never sat in government. You know, I wonder if he don't realize that the most popular and best and efficient run institutions are not government. So when you hear him cry wolf, oh well, you don't understand my job. It's not a matter of don't understand your job. The problem is, Sterling, is that politicians don't want to do their job. They don't want to create a sustainable environment for all its people, because that's their only responsibility. So when we hear all of the sidestepping and the deflections of why they don't do certain things, I want the Premier or anybody in cabinet to tell the people of the Cayman Islands, why haven't they put proper regulations in place for the fuel companies who are directly responsible for the high cost of living in the Cayman Islands? We import every single thing. Every single thing has a fuel factor, but yet for some reason they have gotten the keys to the city, and they're untouchable, and no one wants to embark down that road, because you know why? Because the further down that road you get, the more contributors to the campaign and the donations to all of their causes then be revealed, and then they realize that they're shooting themselves in the foot. And this is the reason why we've been on the treadmill, running for ages but not gaining any distance. So, you know, we could talk forever about all these things, but I never, ever shut my mouth when it comes to trying to highlight the things that can create a better living for the people of the Cayman Islands. Listen, all those people who making their millions of dollars every year in bonuses, nobody don't have anything against them, Sterling. But why are they the only ones allowed to live in this jurisdiction? Because everything else here is unreachable for the small man, and it's becoming more apparent every single day. Every month that passes, more people falling between the cracks, and our government sitting down in a legislative assembly debating a regiment and trying to justify it from a legal standpoint so that they can implement something that has been promised to the UK. The UK ain't helping the Cayman Islands. They ain't helping us. They're helping themselves. And we need to, and our premier is asleep at the wheel. Listen, Caymanian people cannot endure much more of this hypocrisy. We cannot go any further, knowing that people are being forced out of their homes. They're having to eat one time a day. Some people because they can't afford to eat twice a day. And God forbid, and God bless those people who have children, who now have to sacrifice life and limb in order to make sure that these children have a roof over their head and food on the table. Now, how hard it is. We don't need a mythical magic wand. We don't need to have an imagination. We don't need to wind back the hand of time. One thing the premier did confirm for me is that it is mythical for Caymanians to be sustainable in the Cayman Islands as it currently sits. So, but anyway, Sterling, I think I have.
Yeah,
I've said enough as usual.
No, you always give us something to think of. Now, since you are the third caller publicly contributing to our conversation, we did say at the outset the third caller, a couple minutes to talk today, gets an opportunity to win a ticket to the Seafarers Association. So, good friend, we would like to offer that to you. And
well, I tell you, I greatly appreciate that, Sterling.
All right, man. Listen, the gift is given with a good heart and with lots of love to our listeners, and you're an avid contributor, so we would like to offer that to you, and our continued support for the Seafarers. So, congratulations. I hope you don't mind.
Well, I will end by saying this. I will just end by saying this, so I don't always sound like somebody who is just a thorn. Listen, and I'll say this to the Premier, Mr. McLaughlin, the Premier of our country. I will be in 100% in support of anything or any initiative that you do that will reduce the cost of living. The fuel is the first stop you have to make. And anything that you do in regards to reducing that and making sure that that's regulated, you have my support 100%. And I think kudos will be given to any member of any parliament that can address this issue.
All right.
Have a good one.
Thank you, too, man. I will get that ticket to you. All right.
Yeah, man.
Congratulations to all of you. And we'll continue to play along as the day goes on. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
King Sports Center takes pride in being more than just an ordinary gymnasium. For 14 years, their multi-purpose facility has been providing the community with a variety of sporting, recreational, and relaxation activities. King Sports Center has a bowling alley, lounge bar, multi-purpose rooms, powerhouse gym, rock climbing wall, bungee jumping, a 10,000 square foot rink, and so much more. For more information on the variety of services, call their friendly staff today at 946-5464 or email kings@candw.ky or visit www.kingsportscenter.com. King Sports Center, your one-stop shop for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
The Customs and Border Control Overstay Amnesty will end on October 31st. Persons who are already scheduled to depart the island may do so without seeking an extension. Persons wanting to apply for an extension can do so online by visiting www.cbc.gov.ky or by presenting themselves in person to the counter, or appointments can be made by contacting 244-3318 or emailing caymanvisa@gov.ky.
89.9 Radio Cayman helps you to weather the storm during this hurricane season.
One of the most crucial elements of hurricane preparedness is storm awareness. During the season, it is of utmost importance to pay attention to the latest local weather forecasts, as hurricanes do not suddenly form or strike. There are various methods of advanced notification. Utilizing such may be the difference between a favorable outcome and disaster. Both television and radio serve as excellent mediums with up-to-the-minute storm path information in the wake of a hurricane. Another method of tracking a hurricane may be only arm's length away. Your smartphone or tablet can be your most valuable tool before, during, and after a storm, providing countless numbers of apps with crucial hurricane information. Many apps allow you to track storms with moving radar and satellite imagery, plus offer alerts, current conditions, forecasts, advisories, and even video.
This hurricane preparedness tip was brought to you by your community radio station, Radio Cayman 89.9 FM.
Now you can listen to Radio Cayman everywhere.
Everywhere.
Can you hear me now? Everywhere. Everywhere.
Yes, right from your Android or iPhone. Download the Radio Cayman app now on your Android or iOS phone.
The Radio Cayman app
is where you can listen to Radio Cayman everywhere you go.
Everywhere we go, we go. Everywhere we go, we go.
Find it in the Google Store, the Apple Store, or use the link at www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Yes, now you can listen to Radio Cayman everywhere.
Community radio with a different appeal. The voice of the people. Security through adversity. Stuck on you. Radio for all time.
You're listening to Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only 2 species that we have in North Island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice.
It is in the best interest of the people of these islands.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. The annual Poppy campaign is underway. The funds raised support veterans and their families with challenges such as medical expenses. In international news, Pope Francis has said that he thinks same-sex couples should be allowed to have civil unions. He made the comments which observers say are his clearest remarks yet on gay relationships in a documentary. He states in the film, homosexual people have a right to be in a family. A U.S. policeman involved in the controversial killing of black woman Breonna Taylor in her home has broken his silence in his first interview. Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly, who was shot in the leg by Miss Taylor's boyfriend, said the case had nothing to do with race. Mr. Mattingly is one of 3 Louisville Metropolitan Police officers who prosecutors say were cleared of murder charges by a grand jury last month. At least 11 women have been killed and many more injured in a stampede in a stadium in Afghanistan where people were applying for visas, officials say. The crowd had been redirected to a sports stadium instead of the usual visa center in the city of Jalalabad. Visa applications to Pakistan have just resumed after a 7-month pause due to the pandemic. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
your voice, your choice, your radio.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. And thank you so much for joining us. And it's always a pleasure when Wednesdays roll around. We have that hour dedicated between 1 and 2 where we can focus on many of the initiatives that are very able-bodied government agencies, getting into. And today, in partnership, I guess are under the auspices of the Family Resource Center. We get a chance to speak to a very important topic. And as we look at it, bullying is something that we shouldn't just let be a term and become, a cliche. No. We're going to have hopefully, some fun with a very serious topic. Hopefully we'll engage people and cause us to sometimes reflect on our own behaviors. But as we go around the table, I had to take a vote on who was the most handsome man here. I think it's Paul Akal in the next studio. So, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks, Russ. So as we discussed initially, brief intro for our listeners, just in case.
All right, thank you, Sterling. Thank you for having me. I'm Andre Bailey from the Family Resource Center. I am a program facilitator there. And of course, like you said, we're going to be talking about the Stood Up campaign today, which goes on for the month of October.
So Shane, in an effort to leave the best for last, can we go ask you next?
That makes sense. Thanks, Sterling, for having me on, and thanks to the guys at the Stood Up campaign for getting the Alex Patton Foundation involved in their yearly anti-bullying initiative. That's great. Sorry, my name is Shane, as most people already know. I think I'm used to this by now, right? Fundraising chair, board member and support group facilitator with the Alex Patton Foundation.
See now, I mean, no pressure, but we always leave the best for
Me. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Lynn Curry. I am here from the Special Needs Foundation. I am an inclusion facilitator there. Advocate, ally of persons with disabilities. So, yeah.
And the thing is, perhaps Shane, an all joke and jest, and for those who don't listen, I think we have a good conversation and sometimes a good banter and laugh on air. And when we think of the work of Alex Patten Foundation, we think of the Special Needs Foundation, and we see other entities, even some of the service clubs. We recognize that in our interactions with others, we probably don't appreciate that it could be perceived as bullying. We're in a position of authority, maybe the parent to the child, the teacher to the student. Sometimes even two co-workers who may on the organizational chart be at the same level, but one has a particular persona or may have a particular penchant for speaking a certain way, or even been in an organization for a little bit longer, or maybe the ones that pulls the lever more often. Just that alone could make the other person. So when we're looking at bullying, and we come back to the efforts, perhaps Mr. Bailey, we could ask you the definition of bullying, because maybe we hear it, maybe we don't appreciate that, wait a minute, that thing I just did could in fact be perceived as if it isn't.
All right, and that's very good, Sterling, that you brought that out. And as I speak, the definition of bullying will also, I guess, touch on a little bit of what you're saying, because we at the Family Resource Center have also heard our families or persons who follow Friends of the Family Resource Center have spoken to us in recent times about bullying in the workplace. So sometimes if we do understand what bullying is, then we could apply it across the board. I mean, we're talking a lot for the student campaign about students and schools and bullying in schools, but we do recognize that at all levels of society, whether it be in the workplace or probably even those service clubs that you mentioned, that there can be instances of bullying taking place. So when a person is being hurt by another person, and this is being done intentionally on the part of the person doing the hurting, and the person the other person, the receiver, the victim, is made to feel bad about that. They are having a hard time expressing themselves in terms of what's going on with them, and this is continuous on the part of the bully. Then that can be perceived as bullying. So even within the workplace where their persons are on the same level, if an action is being done by that person on a continuous basis to the other staff member, the colleague, and that action causes the person to feel bad in any way, and even when the person being hurt expresses that I am not comfortable with what you're doing, but the person continues to do that action, knowing very well that the person is being affected by it, it is an instance of bullying within the workplace. So then it has to be intentional? Does that have to be continuous? It has to be intentional, repeated. It covers the continuous part. So it's a repetitive action, and it's intentional, and it causes a person to feel bad. Ms. Lynn, from that perspective then, we talk about sometimes looking after the most vulnerable, and I think our youth and our elderly in particular should immediately spring to mind. And then sometimes we see other people who, for some reason, may not have the level of access, may not be able to advocate for themselves in some instances. And we look at students with a desire to be included into activities, but it's just not able at that point in time. How do we respond to acts of bullying in that respect?
Well, I think that you highlighted a really good point. I think that persons with disabilities, persons who are vulnerable, are, can be considered targets for bullying type behavior. But I think something that we really have to focus on is this is learned behavior. Whatever's being modeled to them in an environment, kids are learning this, right? Adults can actually be really mean and cruel. And, going back to the part where you just talked about workplace bullying, if we teach kindness and compassion to all kids, for everybody, then they will be kind and compassionate adults, right? Kind of embedding that in them from when they're young to break that cycle of bullying and not have that be an issue. Is if everyone is kind and compassionate, we won't have bullying happening in the workplace. So it's something that is modeled to kids when they're young. It is something that is learned, and I think that it is our responsibility as a community, as an individual, to ensure that we are supporting children in understanding kindness and compassion for all individuals. And I think that it's really pivotal when we talk about persons with disabilities, because in our community, persons with disabilities are quite isolated and segregated. In terms of inclusion in Cayman, we're quite delayed when it comes to that, simply because we don't have law and policy that reflects, the United Nations Convention on Rights for Persons with Disabilities, etc. The human rights of persons with disabilities in Cayman within our law and policy is not necessarily up to the same standard it is internationally in other countries. And that's something that we're definitely working on, and we want to support persons with disabilities in being able to advocate for themselves and to support them in that advocation in those areas, to recognize as a community that disability is just diversity. We have to celebrate diversity. We have to recognize it. And, sometimes you hear families like, oh, my child doesn't see race, or my child doesn't see disability. It's like, well, you're wrong. Your child does see race. Your child does see disability. And if you don't have a conversation about it, they're going to make assumptions that are frankly probably quite incorrect.
If I may ask them before I ask Shane about our young people in particular, because sometimes we ignore them. We believe that they are so resilient that we don't need to sort of engage them in it further. But disabilities, when we hear that word, perhaps there is a perception and even a misconception. How would you sort of define that? And as we look at it, we're not only just talking about a person who perhaps has a difficulty walking or seeing or hearing. Disabilities, is it as wide-ranging as I would extend it?
Absolutely. I think that disability can be all-encompassing of many different things. Disability can really be viewed in two ways. There's the medical perception of disability, which is that someone has a deficit and they need to be fixed. That's the language that's heavily used.
Okay.
At our foundation, we believe in the social model of disability, which is that persons without disabilities disable persons with disabilities because we create barriers in our community through our attitudes, through our law and policy, through accessibility, all those bits and pieces. We create a disabling world in terms of that.
And I'll ask you further in relation to education in particular, but change from that notion that we're looking at bullying. And our young people, they're resilient. They have an amazing array of tools at their disposal, but sometimes maybe they are so caught up in their worlds that we, as the adults, have no idea what's going on.
Well, you touched on a great point, considering when we were going back in school, we didn't have social media, we didn't have all these distractions.
We didn't have fake news.
Didn't have anything. Didn't have Trump.
Or alternative truths, sorry.
So I could even imagine myself. I couldn't imagine being in school now with all the distractions and the social media and the bullying, I suppose, that can go on. But just to come back on the education, what Lynn was saying about compassion and kindness is that's important to the Alex Patton Foundation and our emotional literacy program, which that targets 5 to 9 year olds in the schools. So that's what we're trying to do, is kind of roll out kind of conflict resolution with each other. So that's a big thing that program will focus on in the school. So we're delighted, and I want to thank R3 this year who have donated the money this year for this year's curriculum, which has just started. So so it's called the Apple and Zippy Friends, and it's
and I think that's the thing, Andre, from that perspective, when we look at bullying and the like, and we think of probably today more than ever because of the sort of the media, the things that happen in that digital sphere, we don't see it. People like Shane and myself who are very, very old, can remember the teasing that happened face to face, but when you went home, it didn't happen. Nowadays it's constant, every day, all day long, because it's on this, idiot box that we run around with every time. We can't get away from it, seemingly. Or can we? What can we do?
Well, what we're talking about is what we call cyberbullying, which we didn't have back in Shane's day when he was going to school. I'm just
back in Shane's day, my punch. Yeah, we had rocks. You had stone cards?
So we had sticks and stones, right? And that was the form of bullying. But now, based on this generation, we have what is called cyberbullying, and that is using the digital space, of course, to do the same sort of acts in terms of attacking somebody or making them feel bad repetitively so. And this can be done outside of the person. We have phishing that takes place. We have body shaming that is done online. You take somebody's photo and you slander it on a social media platform and it goes viral in seconds. So it's a new dimension, if you will, from the start of the Stood Up campaign to what we are today. It would be a new dimension because we have added these different aspects of our types of bullying. So usually we have physical that you mentioned, and probably social and verbal, of course, where someone is doing the face-to-face bullying. But this new dimension of cyberbullying is something that is fast growing and it's continuous, simply because, like you said, the idiot box, you call it, it's stuck to the palm of our hands. And that's the truth. We always have our phones and persons are connected on this social space. So if someone wanted to be malicious, then they easily could do something like that online. The good thing is that if we, as the Stood Up campaign is promoting, take action against acts of bullying, then the idea and the hope is that we will stem it as soon as it happens and we'll swim upstream and prevent it from happening. Lynn spoke about it being learned behavior. And even in cyberspace, then people also learn what is acceptable and what is not. So what can be done from our level? That's why we have the Stood Up campaign, which is an international one. And we are definitely happy that members of the Cayman Society have been supporting the Stood Up campaign. Different initiatives in various schools, as well as the participating in something like the Silent Witness March, which comes up on this Friday at 3:30 p.m. So those things help to get the word out, and definitely this year the theme, Take Action Together, it becomes a call for action for persons to recognize that we all have a responsibility to play our part in stamping out bullying in our society, to understand the social level of it and know that as bystanders, if we see something and do nothing or say nothing about it, then we're empowering the situation to continue.
And I think just something I want to add on when you mentioned the cyberbullying, and something that I think is quite unique, is that obviously cyberbullying is a really terrible thing, but I think what's really unique is that it's evidence, right? And I think that that's where things kind of switch a little bit. It can be really unique in terms of he said, she said kind of situations that might happen in schools or other places, whereas cyberbullying or the bullying that happens online can be seen as evidence. And you know what's quite interesting now is you see a lot of cases of, people when they were younger tweeting about people, or people when they were younger and they commented on someone's Facebook, and it's really coming back to bite them. They're actually, people are aware of people's social media, they're aware of these individuals and can actually look at their histories, and the implications that has is much bigger than it was previously. A job, a university admission, all those things are happening right now, aren't they?
Including visas. I tell you that it goes as far as immigration. Depending on what you post online can affect the attainment of a visa for certain places.
So let me then ask then, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that's, I want to maybe expound that somewhat. But first, you shared earlier with respect, Andre, this notion that we live in this world where we're becoming increasingly cognizant of our behavior. The older generations, so to speak, not just Shane, me and Paul, we can think back to how it was in person. Now we come into this digital sphere where something can be happening continually. We see the big internet companies being able to limit certain information if they choose. They may decide that certain things about certain topics, we're not going to allow that, right? But yet, when it comes to bullying tactics, when we're seeing the behaviors of resulting in unfortunate consequences, what with respect to the law and policy and the lobbying by the public to say, well, if you can do all of this to control that information, why can't you do it in relation to these things. The algorithms can be, and I'm going to come to, Ms. Lynn in a second about it, but from your perspective, as you brought it on the table, we're not looking at a non-state, but we're almost there now with respect to planning regulations and railings and other things in terms of the curfews that are being imposed and the movements of people and all these things. But why not this good thing, using the technology that we have, to say, listen, you can't do that, not because we're going to sanction you, but we're just not going to permit that thing to be posted, this morphing of the images. What do you think?
I mean, I think that because these platforms have the built-in report button, where if something is offensively posted about you, then you can report it.
Fair enough.
It is a starting point where persons could report a particular post or anything that is placed on that platform.
But even before we get to that point, while even let it go out, because they obviously have the ability to limit, just like we can go online now and, sorry, you can't see this video because it's not available in your area. Or they can limit certain things. If you as a parent or as the administrator can limit, what your users can, we know that they have the technology to limit what was even allowed to be posted.
No, I mean that in itself would have been difficult because posting a picture, the computer would read the JPEG format of the picture as opposed to the content itself. It's only after posting then one could see what was actually posted and have it removed. So you
think the technology isn't there?
I think the technology is being developed. We're probably not at that place yet. Because persons have free will, and it's a text box, so you could write whatever and write in code. And the thing about bullying too is that you can make it intentional by not posting direct to the person.
We can talk about the things.
So we can know who it is that we're talking about even without calling a person's name. And that is still a part of the cyberbullying platform itself because of public knowledge. And then we have to think about the thin line between freedom of speech and what is actually harmful to somebody else. So if we're going into, some sharky waters.
That's why we voted in you the intellect amongst the groups. I'm just kidding.
I think the repercussions for them, I think it's a balance of them withholding something that does not go against any of these versus or removing something that does not go against. I've seen things on Instagram and Facebook. It's like this, they removed my post, there's nothing wrong with this post, etc. I think that outweighs sometimes, releasing some harmful content onto the internet and then reporting and removing it at a later time.
Yeah, because there is something, and this is kind of veering off the path a small bit, but it's still related to technology, that there is apps out there for parents to monitor their kids' behaviours and to block maybe certain websites, right, Andrew?
Right. They do have those parental controls and those apps that you can limit what apps your children go onto. But unless we're at the space, and then I don't necessarily see it coming, where each post has to be vetted before it being posted, then that's how we'd get to filter it. The thing is that the internet is instant, and we're getting to a part of being more instant. So the faster something could be, then it's better. When we go into the space of wanting to vet each comment before it gets posted, it causes a delay in the internet, and that's not where the world is headed.
451, huh?
Yeah.
But also, all of that is not preventative, right? It's all responsive. And I think that's really where the focus area needs to be, is that how do we prevent people from becoming cyberbullies? How do we prevent, what kind of intervention are we providing to the victim? And this is something that I also like to mention, is whatever supports are being provided to the victim need to equally be supported to the bully, because ultimately they're the ones that need additional support. They're communicating something that's not quite right, and we have to recognize that they also equally need to be supported.
All right. So we'll come back from the break then, the idea of education and awareness of, like we do with respect to educational initiatives for the environmental protection and recycling. Maybe we do it so that create that, safer, kinder, gentler world. Well, let's talk about that when we come back. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Representing Pentair, Myers Water Systems for over 50 years. Best pumps, tanks, and accessories. Myers Pumps, best prices. Besides household pumps, we carry irrigation pumps, grinder pumps, transfer pumps, and more. Parts, service and repairs, installation optional. Find us at Puritan Place, 337 Eastern Avenue, turn left to end the building. Contact Mowbray on 526-1038, 526-1030, or 926-1038.
Maintaining a strong mind and body through sports and general healthy living is a good course of action. But what about your spiritual man, your inner man? He has to be awakened, fed, exercised, strengthened, and led according to the will of God. So, have you heard the call? I'm Evangelist Brother Joseph Joey Ebanks, and I'm inviting you to worship Wednesday and Thursday nights at 7:30. We are bringing the Word of God to our communities as Jesus commanded. Faith comes by hearing. So come and hear. Bring your own chair or simply park and listen to the Word of God from your vehicle, covering the Cayman Islands with the Word of God, one community at a time.
Have you heard the call? We'll be in Central Bodentown by the post office October the 21st and 22nd.
Honey, our fridge has stopped working again. Everything in the freezer is melting. We need to get this repaired right away. I'm calling Brand Source Service.
When you need the very best appliance service, call Brand Source Service at 623-5000. Offering service and installation of all brands and models of appliances. Brand Source Service is Cayman's source for appliance parts and repairs, with qualified and experienced technicians and the island's largest stock of appliance parts. Brand Source Service will have your repair completed in a flash. So, whatever the problem is, call the experts at 623-5000. Brand Source Service, Dorsey Drive, Industrial Park. Telephone 623-5000.
As an adult, kids want to know that you're listening to them, but they also want to listen to you. When it comes to alcohol and other drugs, they want to know your expectations and how and why to avoid underage drinking. Talking often and early in everyday conversation reinforces your message and keeps lines of communication open. For more information, visit us at ndc.ky. This is a public service message from the National Drug Council and Radio Cayman.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And thanks for listening, sharing, joining us. And if you want to be a part of a discussion, well, the phone lines are open. The ably enabled, Paul Akal sits right there, and he is doing a fantastic job, as all of his other colleagues at the end of the day. So we're going to try for the next 30 seconds, turn the cameras on Paul. Everybody, take him to the studio and put him on Paul. We're talking about the Stood Up campaign, and as part of, the initiative to have us be appreciative of our efforts, but also our actions when it comes to bullying. Glad that the Family Resource Center, Mr. Andre Bailey, be able to help us facilitate this discussion from the Alex Banton Foundation. Yeah, if Alex, Sheen, if you don't mind me saying, man, the muscular Sheen.
Thanks.
I think the audience got the message right now. Right. Hey, no, man, but Miss Lynn, if you don't mind, I see Shane sometimes in the shop. I see him other places, and people can inspire you, can encourage you, and he's not boastful, if I can say, but it's like he lets his persona take the message. See, Andre's like, yeah, that's true. And I was thinking that just during the break, that part of the thing we need to do is we need to, as the parents, as the adults, because the behavior is a learned behavior. Even as teachers, sometimes we don't realize that the way we speak to little Johnny or little Susie, perhaps a little flick on the ear, or little things that we don't think is anything, we don't mean anything by it. We maybe send a message, oh, that's okay, you can do that.
I mean, 100%. And I've seen this happen in I was at a recreation, which will go unnamed for reasons.
Political launch, that's good.
And there was a teacher there were multiple kids in this classroom, and there was a kid who, clearly had some important information to share with his friends because he was speaking while the teacher was speaking. And the teacher turns and goes, "What's your name?" And he says his name. And she goes, "Why do I feel like I'm going to say your name so much?" And I'm like, you don't realize the implications of what you just said and how now everyone in this room is going to view this person.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so key, is that adults don't realize that they're flippantly making these comments without recognizing the implications of what they're saying. And that is like when we talk about modeled behaviors, how are those kids now going to treat him differently? For sure, because of what you said.
And I go back to that comment or the definition. Was malice part of it, Andre? Did it have to be malicious?
It's yes.
You said malicious, right?
So yeah.
So that
if you
teacher
are
just now wasn't probably being.
The thing about it is we have to be careful between being rude, being mean, and being a bully, because there are different degrees.
Rude, mean, and bully is different degrees.
Yes.
Or the same thing, right?
They're not. They're family members. They're related.
Kissing cousins.
They're kissing cousins, but they're not the same thing. A person might have done something intentional and they only did it one time. That's them being mean, because they only did it once. It probably was addressed and it never happened again. That person wouldn't be considered a bully because they were just mean in that instant and it was addressed. The bully issue comes in when that action is repeated and continuous. So that person was told, or they're aware that they are being mean, and despite knowing that, they continue to do what it is that they're doing. Being mean to the other person, it evolves to bullying.
All right. Not in any way, shape, form. I don't think it's my intent, or if Ms. Tin would let me say it, not even hers, right? To pick on teachers or education, but because that's the environment that happens all the time. So. And respectfully, Mr. Bill, if I can address to you initially. So in the teacher, we've all had teachers that, Mr. So-and-so, he's so strict, he's whichever. And it's never to the same child, but it's the same action from that teacher, that comment to, like I say your name all the time, or they're flicking on the air, whatever it is. If a teacher does that to every single class, to every single student across the board, from the first day that, and just use he, for instance, started teaching, and now 30 years later, he's still doing it. Is that a bully or a bullying act? It's
a bullying act. And what I think is more important about it is that teacher is also given license to other students to learn that behavior and probably promulgate it.
All right.
When a child sees an adult doing something and the adult does it, it makes it okay.
Validates it, right?
It validates it.
Okay.
So if children are learning behavior and Mr. X could do it, then I could do it. And while a child might not, the teacher does it, and the teacher did it to him once and move on to another child. I mean, God forbid that's the situation. But that child who learned the behavior now doing it to that same child all the time, because they're in classes together, they're at recess together, it becomes that bullying type of behavior. It's learned behavior.
But I would also say, I remember when I was in school, I remember a teacher and I was like, she doesn't like me. And and this is the thing. Of course, we value teachers within our community, but we also have to recognize that there will be teachers in our community who have bullying type behavior, or across the board. It happens in all different environments, all different sectors. It's not just going to be in one place at one time, right? It's going to be across the board. And I think that I remember when I was in school, I was like, this teacher doesn't like me. I know she doesn't like me. She's mean to me. I felt that she was mean to me. And it was a really horrible feeling. And many kids have those feelings, right? They feel like a teacher doesn't like them, or... and that's something that adults are unkind, especially to those that they perceive as different.
The reality, Sterling, and if we should get real about it, is
let's get real, bro.
Within a school environment, there is a social hierarchy that exists within a school environment, typical of what happens in a society, because it's a reflection of what happens in society. So within that social hierarchy, there are the cool kids, and they're the kids at the bottom of the triangle, which are not necessarily the cool ones. And if the teacher, who is the person in authority, does something to a child who is not among the cool kids, then again it becomes licensed to do that to that child. And with bullying, we find that it happens within that hierarchy itself as well. Where persons are trying to get into the top 20% of those cool kids in school, and they might do something to another child, and others don't stand up to it, or others don't say anything about it, because if I say something to my friend and I'm not at the top of the food chain, then I will be outcasted. I will not be a part of the cool group anymore. And you want to stay in that group. So it continues to happen and no one says anything, which is why the Stood Up campaign has become so important. Because we want to empower our youth. We want to empower all children to understand what is going on and learn how to go about addressing it, as well as those who are the bystanders to not empower the bullies in their actions on each occasion.
So then if I could then ask, and the only reason why I'm grateful that we could just use education in the classroom setting, because what is it, 50,000 children in our schools, anyway, they're the ones that are going to be today affected, and tomorrow, the consequences will continue if we don't have that transformative change in our society and education. But let's take it from out the classroom into the wider society. So that one individual who sees a behavior, maybe it's a government agency, maybe it's a monopoly like business that says, you know what, take it or leave it, you don't want this, too bad, or whatever it is, right? And someone, the wider community says, that's wrong. And there are processes and protocols and mechanisms to challenge judicial review. Maybe they look at FOI, whatever this thing, or they just have a public campaign. Where is the society's response to be supportive of that sort of advocacy? Whether it's the child in the classroom who's saying, hey, wait a minute, Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, you, or even, schoolmate friend, you can't be talking to this, other classmate like this, or you big business or you government thing or whatever, that's not right. Are we sufficiently comfortable and confident in supporting the actions of that one individual who's standing up to this big thing that seems to be carrying a heavy stick?
It's an uphill battle, of course. Yes, it is. But I think even here, the government has been making strides towards the issue of harassment and bullying within the workplace, within government, and of course, on an international level, there are conventions and there are human rights laws that protect persons from being bullied. I mean, at that level, it might not be so much bullying, but it's the same thing. The concept is the same. There are those international laws that help to protect persons from being bullied, if you will, by superpowers within the society. So in recent times, the government has put out that harassment policy, which also covers bullying in the workplace. It's for us to move the power from off the paper and to enact it within the space. Because otherwise it's just a paper tiger, they're strong on paper, but unless we use what was put out by the government to help our cases and even having our HR managers within the workplace to be au fait with this policy, as well as employees themselves to make themselves fully aware of what it says and what governs it, then at that point we're able to take more action and not just sit back and cause it to happen.
Fair enough.
And I think, regarding the situation within education, I think that it does function quite differently, because I think that they're kids, and the responsibility placed on them to report, bullying behavior from a teacher would be unique in itself, but also I think that there has to be some responsibility within the administration, within the school, within the ministry, within private schools, associations, etc., to ensure that they are observing and ensuring that their teachers are, doing what they do best, which is teach our future adults, teach our children, right? They're, these young people are very precious and going to grow up one day and be the leaders of the country and do all these amazing things. And I think that has to be a big focus.
I think if we get nothing from this entire campaign, if we get nothing from this issue that we're discussing of bullying, is the fact that the biggest problem with bullying is lack of action on any part, from the school level, at the businesses, within the community, at any form of workplace that you have. The biggest problem with bullying is lack of action. So when that report comes in, or when that report is made, or when that action is observed, if nothing is done, then it goes unactioned, it goes without consequence, it goes unattended to, unaddressed. So if we recognize the important part that we have to play together as citizens, the social responsibility that comes with that, then we are beginning to stem this issue of bullying across all spheres. Lack of action is the biggest thing that we can do against achieving anything, and we've learned that from history. When we're looking at all different type of social protests, when we're looking at all type of actions that had to be taken by persons of the past to get to where we are today, if those persons didn't act, then who knows what would have happened. Would probably still be in some very difficult social situations. So important for all your listeners, Sterling, everybody on Radio Cayman across the Cayman Islands, if we don't act, then we are allowing the act of bullying or anything else to continue within our society.
And sometimes someone might know, have we talked about this, that they're being bullied. So sometimes maybe you have to take a step back and think, am I being too sensitive on this? Or, did that person really... So what you do maybe then is, share the problem, right? As in talk to someone, the third party, and let them know what happened. Maybe talk it out with that person before you take it further. But that'd be an option as well, right?
I mean, once you feel, once any action causes you to feel uncomfortable, then it should be assessed.
Okay, to Shane's point, and then the other time, let's flip the coin over a second. We probably know people, we probably know certain, even cultures, where the behavior of the people, that's just the way they are, right? That's what we say. And that comment wasn't malicious, it wasn't intended to be mean, but it didn't make you feel too good. Miss Lynn, how do you weigh in that person is...
I think that we have to understand cultural diversity, but I also think that we have to think about, the reason why this adult is treating persons this way is because this is how they were treated when they were a child. And this is where I think that having, the social, emotional, emotional literacy program and, for us, social emotional instruction all the time in all curriculums across every age level is so important, because I think that, it becomes not an excuse, but it can become a bit of, not taking on that social responsibility. And people might just be so unaware and not realize, oh, actually, I'm perpetuating this by doing these behaviors, because although they're okay in my culture, I have to think, okay, well, what were the implications for me when I was a child? How did it make me feel when someone did this to me? What were, what were the outcomes of these behaviors? Because I think that it's really, people have all different views of parenting, all different views of teaching, etc. But I think that we have to be really, really aware. And now that there is more research coming out about the implications of, different parenting styles, corporal punishment versus, other responses, I think that we have to be really clear on that, so that, yes, of course, we respect and value cultural difference, but I think that when you are teaching a class of multiple different cultures and differences, we have to treat everyone with respect and dignity, and treat people how you want to be treated, right? Like that's the most...
The golden rule, no?
The golden rule, right? Like we just have to remember that.
All right. Let's pause, take a short break. When we come back, continue the discussion. Perhaps Andre can share with us any particular activities, initiatives, anything you want us to share. Shane, continue to weigh in. And those who are listening, the phone lines are there if you want to call, if you just want to listen. I certainly appreciate your company. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Digital is not a buzzword. It is a culture. At Digicel, we've made it our mission to enrich your digital lives. That's why we're bringing together more of all the experiences you love. The latest shows, the best of local and international music and radio, live sports, cloud storage, breaking news, HD video chats, and more. Welcome to Digital at Digicel, the Caribbean's fastest mobile network. Digicel, better together.
After a hurricane, do not use the public water supply until the Water Authority advises that it is safe to do so. If the water supply becomes contaminated and unsafe to drink, the authority will issue a boil water notice. To comply with the notice, boil water vigorously for 4 to 5 minutes and let it cool before drinking. For more useful hurricane preparedness tips, visit the Water Authority's website at www.waterauthority.ky or follow us on social media.
Rotary Central Music Extravaganza tickets are moving like a hold glass of swanky on a hot Cayman Brack day.
Get your tickets now from Rotary Central members, Rotary Ticket Sellers, eventpro.ky, Funky Tanks, A.L. Thompson's Home Depot, Mango Tree Restaurant, Seabirds Bar, Eastern Avenue, Tashara Lewis in Kemenbrack. Get your golden tickets. Get ready to be a winner. Stand your chance to win $40,000. Second prize $4,000. 6 $1,000 prizes and more. The Music Extravaganza 2020. Building bus shelters throughout the Cayman Islands, supporting over 70 Rotary community projects. Rotary Central, not-for-profit number 232. Rotary opens opportunity.
Fidelity Bank would like to thank all essential workers. We salute your efforts and thank you for the sacrifices you've made to keep us all safe. During these challenging times we're facing, our top priority is the health and safety of the communities we serve. And while it's true that things are changing rapidly every day, one thing that will never change is our commitment to giving you the best and sound financial solutions to help you during and after the coronavirus pandemic. At Fidelity Bank, our focus will always be you. Fidelity, we're good for you.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. Are you currently a member and interested in management of your pension plan? If so, consider volunteering to be elected as a trustee at our upcoming extraordinary general meeting to be held on the 4th of November. Please visit our website, chamberpension.ky, or email pensions@chamberpension.ky for further details. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you.
Are you constantly cleaning your home or office
and spending less time on business or with family?
H&A Janitorial Services is offering residential and commercial cleaning starting at just $11 per hour per cleaner for a limited time only. Buy 2 cleaning, get the third free. That's buy 2 cleanings and get the third free. From deep cleaning services to upholstery, carpets, windows, tiles, and grout, H&A uses antibacterial cleaning products to ensure a spotless, sanitized environment. Call H&A Janitorial 743-2875 or 324-0879 and ask how you can get your third cleaning absolutely free. Terms and conditions apply.
What a great spot for lunch. I haven't been here in ages.
I saw it on Experience Cayman.
What's that?
It's a free online festival showcasing all the great things to do in Cayman.
Oh, that's so cool. I'll check it out for sure. Now, what are we having for lunch?
Experience Cayman is a celebration of everything local. To rediscover all the best things to see and do in the Cayman Islands, visit gov.ky/Experience Cayman and follow Experience Cayman on Facebook and Instagram. Brought to you by the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure.
Your Radio Cayman 7 a.m. news, brought to you by Cayman National, proudly serving the Cayman Islands since 1974. Visit www.caymannational.com for up-to-date information for all your financial needs and follow us on social media. The Honeymoon Over, a CNCF production, heard on Radio Cayman Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. and repeated on Saturdays at 6:45 p.m. It's proudly sponsored by Radio Cayman, Ministry of Culture, CUC, Grape Tree Cafe, Cayman Medical Supplies, and Puritan Cleaners. Make sure and tune in. You hear?
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. And thanks so much. And if my guests don't mind, can I say publicly thanks to you and to all of our guests who take time out of their lunch. I like to eat, as you can see, and I think it's important to break bread. But for those who take time to listen and take time to be our guests, it doesn't matter if you're, beating your drum or if you're, championing a cause. The fact is that time is valuable. So I'm very grateful that we can have this conversation, and a conversation like this in particular, that sometimes can tug at people, can make them feel uncomfortable. But if we don't know, if we're not cognizant of what we're doing, then we're apt to repeat it. And if it's a bad thing, that's not good, right? So, Mr. Bailey, to you, Miss Curry, and of course to Muscular Shane. It's the man. But you know what, Shane? Go right ahead, man.
What's the question? Just take the floor.
Just take the floor.
How was my day? The weather's great.
I mean, I want to from the Family Resource Center while we are here still promote some of the activities that are happening for the rest of the month for Stood Up. This evening, actually, we are having our family skills session. It's a session on how to bully-proof your children. So we're inviting the entire public to join us on Zoom. Please go to our Facebook page or our Instagram page. The link is provided there for registration. Register and be a part of the conversation this evening on how to bully-proof your children. It becomes important when we're talking about this issue to know what to do to protect our children from bullying, and when it does happen, what to do. Because if we know how to address a situation, then the occurrence of it is not as shocking and it's not as impactful because you'd have prepared for it. Yes? On Friday, as mentioned before, we're going to be having the Silent Witness March. We're inviting persons to come out and join us at 3:30 p.m. Just beside the Government Administration Building on Elgin Street. Please join us at 3:30. We march into town. Wear pink. The stood up colors are pink, so wear pink, and we are in support for the Silent Witness March. We are in support of persons who are survivors of domestic violence, as well as persons who are survivors of bullying. So it's limited to everyone. So we want everybody to come out and to be a part of that march. So join us for our webinar this evening, and of course join us on Friday for the Silent Witness March. We are also encouraging businesses and other schools to plan their dress down day. We have stood up shirts on sale, so persons are able to contact the FRC, the Family Resource Center, and order stood up shirts from us. They're $12 for children and only $15 for adults. Organize a dress down day, collect some funds, a little fundraising, and donate to the FRC. All monies collected go towards our programs for our families, vulnerable families, women, children, men, all family members. All our funding, all our sponsorship goes towards our programming at the Family Resource Center. So that's how you could help. And of course, even if you're not going to be a part of the match, you could still buy stood up shirts from us. We do have more available in office. Call us, contact us at 949-0006 or email us at frc@gov.ky. Order your shirts and be a part of this taking action together.
Oh, with that in mind, as we talk about taking action, sometimes we do a lot of talking about things. And sometimes when we're talking, it's got lost in translation. People don't always hear. It isn't always communicated effectively, and even when it is, there is no action. And I think back to Ms. Lynn, what you were sharing earlier, this notion of education and being transformative and reaching, just like Sheen was sharing with the Alex Panther Foundation, those very young, formative minds in their early years, the behavior that we want. To the parent who's listening, or to that adult in particular who may have that mindset, well, children need to be schooled a certain way, and we can't, put them like this then because they become, the word that comes to mind is sensitive, but there's another word too. How do we make sure, just like we do for the environmental considerations, I think all of us appreciate how our children are very, very strong leaders in recycling and making sure that we're not damaging our environment. Can we get our children from the early age to be kinder, be gentler, be more nurturing, loving, supportive?
Yeah, I think there are so many more resources now, books and stories that you can read with kids. And I'm thinking from, an at-home perspective, and have these conversations, if a kid sees a adult in a wheelchair, sometimes parents will be like, oh no, we can't talk about that. It's like, no, this is an opportunity to have a really interesting conversation with your child and share something that they might not have previously known or learned. I think that from a bigger perspective, it would be great. I know that Alex Panton Foundation is doing such good work with their emotional literacy program, but actually having it within embedded in curriculum is social emotional instruction. It should be in every single school. It should be for every age group, because we know that it is so important. And the evidence demonstrates that individuals who receive social emotional instruction across their early years, across their teenage years, are likely to be more successful, are likely to stay in school longer, are less likely to go to prison. These are, these are evidence bases that come out of the US and other countries that demonstrate that social emotional instruction should be in the foundation of all schools.
Exactly.
And exactly. And I think that you're filling a gap, but I also think it's really important that we recognize that there is still, Alex Panton Foundation only has so much resource, right? Unless, people are willing to fund further. But I think that it's actually having schools also take on some level of ownership, that they have to recognize that they should be implementing some level of social emotional instruction within all of their curriculum bases. And I'm sure you agree.
Yeah, but I was going to go on to you, as in later in life, even the top 500 CEOs now are mandating that their top management go through emotional intelligence training, because the impacts are just through the roof. The studies are out there. A more productive workforce, less sickness. You have to connect with your employees and the people under you. If you're a manager, right, you have to ask them, well, how was your day? Not just on the job. Well, how is that thing going on at home? Is everything still okay with that?
But then, with that in mind, because I like what you're sharing, and I was thinking to the changing dynamic that we're seeing globally. We've seen it here. We're seeing it with sexual harassment policies being implemented. We see different things. But to that manager, or even to that teacher, the teacher is probably the only one that would probably be different, because the teacher has been perceived always to be nurturing and always inclusive and ensuring that the child's day in the classroom, on the school ground, and at home. The teacher's always been so invested. But then to the workplace and to the adults and the colleagues, are we, because of all that's happening, we see the stuff out of Hollywood and everywhere else, at risk of genuinely saying to your co-worker, hey, is everything okay? How's things at home? And being perceived that you've crossed that line.
That's down to management. That's what makes a good manager. That you can be tough when you need to be tough, but you can also be empathic when you need to be emphatic, right? Andrea, it looks like you're going to say something.
No. I was just thinking, because you can, at the Family Resource Center, we do emotion coaching, which would have been equivalent to what happens at the Alex Panton Foundation and what Lynn is speaking about. We're seeing the parents, we're seeing the families. Right. And we have emotion coaching where we do teach them about emotions at the full spectrum of understanding them, being able to label them, and even for our children to recognize what they are, because we feel them but we don't necessarily know how to express them. And you can be emotionally intelligent without crossing a personal line, because some persons, and the truth, they don't want to mix their personal and professional lives, but that doesn't stop you from being emotionally mature and emotionally intelligent.
Empathy.
And I think once you have that level of empathy, or once you have that emotional intelligence, then you can be a good manager, you can be a good teacher, you can be a good parent without crossing certain personal and professional boundaries.
But I also think, as humans, we can recognize sometimes the intentions of what someone is asking, right? And I think that that comes back to that kindness and compassion. If individuals are kind and compassionate and recognize that when you value your employees, when you have conversations with your employees about their personal life, when you, there's obviously post-COVID and all this complications of, it's like, you're a mom, how do you work from home with your child there? It's like, how can we better support you to work from home as well as help your child to learn, right? It's thinking about it in a different way. It shouldn't be you're expected to work from full time, and how are you going to make sure your child's learning? It's completely reframing the way that we're thinking about it.
Transformative approach, right?
Absolutely.
Well, this is why I think these sorts of discussions allow us to be able to appreciate that it isn't just about the action of this person in a power position and the impact on this one. It's the wider community's role. I appreciate it. If we could, though, with respect, perhaps, Andre, end with you with some closing thoughts. We'll start with Ms. Lynn first. And as we wrap up our discussion, any closing thoughts? And then Shane, and then Andre, we'll leave it with you last. Would that be fine?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think just everyone take their level of social responsibility, and if you're not going to be vocal about it, you have to think about if you're complicit in it and how, the implications of not speaking up and speaking out or taking action together, as Andre said. And I just want to thank everyone for having me here today, and FRC for their great initiatives and, raising awareness every year in October for this.
Yeah, I think we kind of skirted around as well, and it's important that we're not sounding like we're bashing teachers or parents.
Oh, no.
I'm not. But so, for example, on another call on a different station, about parents. I can't mention that. But like a caller come on and saying, "Oh, well, you don't know the stresses parents have now these days," and we're fairly, emotional about it. So it's important that we show support for everybody, and especially parents as well, show them lots of support. And the family resource center does a great job, but we also need to be cognizant of the fact of this. Oh, my child wouldn't do that when it comes to bullying. No, my child wouldn't bully. There is an element of that. I'm not a parent myself, but let's be honest, it is out there, so we need to be cognizant of that. That's one thing I'd like to say. And just to say, back to supporting the teachers as well, because in a lot of cases, even back in Ireland, when the kids are coming in, if they don't have enough skill set, even mannerisms, they end up, the teachers end up trying to teach them the common skills, communication, this kind of thing, and they don't get time to do the curriculum, and this goes on. So,
but also children in a lot of places will be excluded for not knowing or being taught those same things that you're talking about, right? Yeah. It's like, oh, well, you don't know how to do this. I don't have the time to teach you. Too bad, kicking you out, right? And I think that you're right, that teachers need that support. If teachers had access to the, and I know you've trained so many teachers through your master's, your Zippies program to support them in supporting those kids. And I think that that's exactly 100% where it is as well.
So I don't know how much time, but Alex Patton Foundation, we're just delighted that it's got so much take up in all the schools, and we're actually the first country in the whole world to have the fully inclusive program of the Apple and Zippy Friends. So that's a big record breaker. But we just come back. I just want to finish up with, we also have our youth ambassador program. So these ambassadors are in the school. They're aged 12 to 16 year olds. We train them, give them different badges, say teamwork, mental health skills. So this is why we do the 5 to 9 year olds for the Apple and Zippy Friends, but we've also got the youth ambassador program, which is kind of a peer-to-peer support network, mainly for mental health, but can be for other things like this as well, right? So it's important just to get that out there.
All right. I just want to take the opportunity to thank Special Needs as well as the Alex Patton Foundation for partnering with the FRC on this Stood Up campaign. Their support is absolutely important, and we recognize that, and I want to publicly say thank you to them. And we just want to encourage persons in the society to support us with this campaign and to understand the importance that you play in making sure that we nip bullying and mitigate, minimize, and eradicate as best as possible all actions of it. And it becomes important to think about what I can do to take an active role against the action of bullying within our society. How it is that I can be more emotionally intelligent, how can I be considerate of others, and teach my children how to also be considerate of others, so that we do not be in a situation where we're being a bully to someone else. And persons in authority, when they see something or hear something, to actively pursue an investigation, to look on it. What we have seen is a lot of times when things are reported and it's not acted on, children feel defeated and they feel like there's no one to assist and there's no one to help. The Family Resource Center is available for all support for parents, and we're asking other persons in authority, when they hear about something, to act on it as best as possible, so that persons who are victims can be given some sort of support.
Thank you each very much for your time, and looking forward to our continued discussions. Now, to our listeners, we're going to pause and take a short break. When we come back, more Talk Today.
You are listening to Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only 2 species that we have, on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice.
It is in the
best interests of the people of these islands.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. Job seekers and volunteers are invited to explore current and upcoming vacancies at the Health Services Authority's Recruitment Fair, taking place Friday, 23rd of October from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Attendees are reminded that masks are mandatory throughout all HSA facilities. Persons are also encouraged to download and complete an HSA application in advance by visiting hsa.ky. In international news, the UK is pushing ahead to be the first nation to carry out human challenge studies, where up to 90 healthy people will be deliberately exposed to COVID. The trials, which would begin in January 2021, aim to speed up the race to get a COVID-19 vaccine. Parents of 545 children separated from their families at the border as part of the Trump's administration's zero-tolerance policy cannot be found. About two-thirds of the parents have been deported back to their country of origin, according to a court filing. Thousands of families were separated under the 2018 policy until the White House backed down amid an outcry. 2 students were paid to identify a teacher to the man who beheaded him last Friday in an attack that shocked France, prosecutors have alleged. Samuel Paty was targeted close to his school near Paris for showing cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad in class. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Your voice, your choice, your radio.
Hi, this is Danny Coleman, Director of Hazard Management Cayman Islands. We're about to enter the height of the hurricane season, and given that we've already seen a significant amount of activity in the Atlantic this year, we're really asking the public to get ready for the next few months. Some tips of getting ready: be informed and know your risks associated with the high winds as well as storm surge. Find out how high your home is above the sea level and the flooding history. If you have any new buildings or roads that have been constructed near you, this could impact levels of flooding that you may not have previously experienced. Determine where you, your family and your pets will shelter in a storm. Know where the public shelters are, and if you have medical needs, be sure to go to a shelter that is a designated emergency medical centre. Make sure your home, car and property insurance, as well as your passports and other important documents, are up to date and that you have copies and photographs in a secure and dry location. If you have a boat, please decide now where and how you will secure it. Check your hurricane shutters, and if you don't have them, consider purchasing plywood. Stock up on hurricane supplies, non-perishable items including prescribed medication and personal sanitation items. And for more information, please visit our website at www.caymanprepared.ky. Be informed, make a plan, be prepared and stay safe, Cayman.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. And we invite you to be a part of our discussion now. It's going to be so open line for the remainder of the program. And sometimes, they say one of the best things you can do for people is to listen. So if there's something that you want to share, it may be that you need to vent. Maybe you just need to articulate something. Maybe you just need to question something, or you just may want to share a comment. Well, happy to listen. Hopefully, offer up some, semblance of help, but at the very least, provide an avenue, an opportunity for us to share together. So 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255. It's a flow toll-free call, and we want you to always feel that this program is here to facilitate a meaningful exchange of information as we dialogue and discuss the things that are affecting us. Now, for some of us, we love the political landscape. We love the perceived changes that may come. We're watching, perhaps because of our travels, perhaps because of our past work experiences. Maybe it's our family connections or business interests, we watch with bated breath, what's going to transpire within the U.S. as they go to the polls, sort of officially or formally or, in person. There's been early voting and the like. And then there are those of us who, what happens and let it happen, and we don't really pay much attention. But I say that in that, do we still, pay as much attention to the elections in the region or in the UK? Are we looking at what is now transpiring in Ireland relative to, lockdowns and house arrests and the like? Are we looking at what could be happening here in short order? And are we informing ourselves? Are we getting actively engaged? Now, one of two things that I've been asked to sort of broach with our listeners, and I would ask you to weigh in. A number of individuals have shared that because they've seen it in their own neighborhoods, the roads that go past their homes, and they have then asked, other friends and family members who live in other communities, other co-workers, and to pay attention. Is this similarly happening in your own neighborhood? And it's the speed with which we drive through in these, very, very highly developed residential areas, where in some instances, because it's an old established neighborhood, the roads may be not as wide, and they may be really winding and the like, but people still go through very, very fast, and not just on motorbikes or on small, fast cars, but in big dump trucks and, other very, very large vehicles. So is that something that you're experiencing? Now, because I've had a couple of individuals within the Brush Tree Hill area. This is in West Bay for those who don't know. And if you ever driven that road, as you drive in, you go past the Bush, stadium, and you're making your way up to Barkhouse, you find that the road does narrow in certain parts, and you find that sometimes the corners are quite blinding, and people still, come through very fast. Now, a wonderful friend indicated the other day that, bright and early in the start of the morning, little boys and girls are playing in their yards, enjoying, the fresh air and the freedoms that we probably have taken for granted forever. And whether it's a big truck, pulling something, or a big truck laden with something else, or whether it's the car coming through, this is a regular occurrence, and not just on Saturdays, but every day. Now, is that the same thing that you're experiencing in your neighborhood? Is it putting the neighbors at risk as they cross the street to visit neighbors, or as they walk, to the little convenience stores and the surrounding businesses? Are they at risk if they're just standing, in their yard talking with someone passing by, or if they're just out for an evening stroll or a morning exercise or what have you? And it's the same thing in other communities, whether you live in, the Prospect area, or whether you live in other parts. Now, two of the many individuals just this week alone, and I would count from Saturday to today, who said, what can we do as a community to make sure that the communities are safer when it comes to the speeds at which many of us drive through those communities? Some have said, why can't we put, those little speed bumps in the roads like we see in the parking lots, or we're seeing on other roads? One individual in one community said that it was almost an uphill battle, almost impossible to get the requisite authorities to even look at the area, and then to come back and conclude, oh, well, this is a public road, we can't do that. Now, it may not just be the need to impose some sort of restriction to slow traffic with respect to those speed bumps, but it could be something else that is done, a measure that will bring people. Now, only because I've had an extensive discussion with a couple of people within the Birch Tree Hill area, because it's a road that I'll drive from time to time, somewhat familiar with it, for them to say that there's a section of there, it's a winding road, it narrows, it's sharp corners in certain spots, there's a hill not far, and yet cars go through, large dump trucks, other, bits and pieces of machinery will go through, and yet there seemingly isn't sufficient care and attention by all of the road users with respect to the way we use the roads. Now, is this speaking to what we're becoming as a people, that we're only mindful of trying to go where we're going to go, and we want to get there as quickly as we can, so we're not worried about the other users? Doesn't matter whether there's an educational initiative to share the road or otherwise. What is your thought? Is that a big deal? Is that something that affects the quality of life? Does it impact on our safety and well-being? Or is it really nothing of any consequence? Well, be interested to hear from you. I'm going to pause and take a break, give you a chance to dial 1-800-534-8255 or 949-8037. And let us know, what do you feel about the way we use our roads and the speeds in which we travel, and especially as we move through the neighborhoods. Well, stay tuned for Talk Today.
Stronger, wider, higher, lighter. The all-new Ford Ranger Raptor. Powerfully built with a 2.0 diesel Panther engine and 210 horsepower. Modern with leather interior and 8-inch touchscreen, Sync 3 technology and power features. Tough, built to handle the off-road with 4-wheel drive, terrain modes, and 10-speed automatic transmission. Coming early October to Vamped Motors, Walkers Road. To find out more and to test drive the bold new Ford Ranger Raptor, visit Vamped Motors, Walkers Road, or call 949-8288.
Nominations are now open for the 2021 National Heroes Day Awards for Seafaring Heritage. Nomination forms are available from the Ministry of Health, Environment, Culture and Housing, Government Administration Building in Georgetown, Grand Cayman. The Cayman Islands Seafarers Association in Prospect, Grand Cayman. The District Administration, Government Administration Building in Cayman Brac, and online at celebratecayman.ky. The Ministry of Health.gov.ky. Deadline for submissions is Saturday, 31st October 2020. Only completed nominations received by the deadline will be considered.
Maintaining a strong mind and body through sports and general healthy living is a good course of action. But what about your spiritual man, your inner man? He has to be awakened, fed, exercised, strengthened, and led according to the will of God. So, have you heard the call? I'm Evangelist Brother Joseph Joey Ebanks, and I'm inviting you to worship Wednesday and Thursday nights at 7:30. We are bringing the Word of God to our communities as Jesus commanded. Faith comes by hearing, so come and hear. Bring your own chair or simply park and listen to the Word of God from your vehicle, covering the Cayman Islands with the Word of God, one community at a time.
Have you heard the call? We'll be in Central Bodentown by the post office October the 21st and 22nd.
Radio Cayman News.
We do have a very concerning situation.
6 positives, 5 are travelers, 1 a child at Red Bay Primary School.
This child is weakly positive.
We understand any concerns parents and guardians may have
the abilities, we have the capacities, we have the skills to respond to these issues, clamp down on them.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice for today's biggest news.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
And good afternoon. Welcome back. 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255. Or you can WhatsApp 925-3261 and share your thoughts with us. Give us your perspective. And a quick message off here during the break. Someone sent through just a picture of a vehicle, if I can call it that, going really fast. The caption says, in a particular residential area. Now it's not a video. it doesn't show how the speed is not a blurred picture, but something that's, as we're talking about, just happening now on our roads, in our neighborhoods, and perhaps asking us to make another appeal. I know we want to get where we're going, but I think we want to get there safely. And it's not about not getting a speeding ticket. It's about not getting in an accident, not causing injury to yourself or others, or not, hitting something and damaging your car. So drive a little bit more cautiously and with a little bit more consideration, and perhaps exercise a little bit, better judgment when you're especially driving through our neighborhoods. Give us a shout and share with us what you think. 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255, and let us know what else is on your mind. Then the other thing that we had perhaps been asked to consider isn't just the way we use our roads and the traveling up and down, but connected to that was the sentiment that as we look at the growing population, whether it's a deliberate attempt to increase it to 150 or 200,000, whether that happens next year or the next century, the notion that we need to look at our infrastructure, we need to look at the way we develop, the pace at which we develop, and the manner in which we have the ability to move our people from home to work to recreation, to home to work to recreation, and back and forth. And how many of us, would still want a car? How many of us would not want to incur that expense, not have that? What to some now is a necessity, and to others is still a recognition of a luxury. But in the absence of being able to safely and reliably get where you need to go, not just, back and forth between work and school and home, but you want to go out to some places, and you want to get there on a scheduled route, on a scheduled time, and you want to get there safely and comfortably. Are we lacking in our sort of thinking as we progress down this century? Let's go to our phones. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling. Hey, good afternoon. How are you today?
Sterling, I'm fine, and you?
Oh, excellent.
You're excellent. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
I just Sterling talk about the driving.
Yes, Mom.
I mean, I'm already a civil servant, Why don't government give me one of them little things that they capture some with? I could get revenue, because let me tell you something.
Yeah.
I think they're driving a plane when they cross this here.
Somebody said they were flying.
No, they were more than flying. It must have been one of them space shuttles that they were in that can go so far. No, Sterling, something got to be done. I think they should put up cameras and stuff. I'm going to tell you what happened to me. I will go in on that roadway horseshoe, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can't remember exactly the spot I was, but that was the road. I was going to Commander Bay. Sterling, I'm there so comfortable driving. I take my time,
mm-hmm.
and I make sure I leave home early.
Right.
I can't give government my pension that I work for, back to them. So I can try. And I got this habit. I leave home early. When you got an appointment, you should be there 5 minutes before time. And Sterling, I'm going along the road now, creeping. If my children say no more than 40, her car can go. I said, that's good. And this car overtook me. And guess what side he did? Because if I'm going up on my left, he's supposed to come over to my right and overtake me, right?
I would think so, yeah.
Guess what he did? Came on my left.
On the shoulder?
Yeah. On the shoulder side.
Yeah.
And I jumped out the seat. But I wish that I could have caught his number, but I know the car when I see it. Something got to be done. Because like I say, if the day that anything happened to somebody through their carelessness, whoever it happens to, let that person pay for it dearly. Because something got to be done. Sterling, you got to sit down here. You got to see him on the phone.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, on the phone, talking, going, driving. I see cars now. They screw down here, and there's on the phone the car behind is ruined because they're looking at the phone, and they should be able to get gas station. It's still down by my house. You know something? And I saw a car one Saturday. Sterling, I was more frightened in my life. A man and his wife was on a bicycle, and they had a little boy in the back. Now, cars are coming on the four-way center, and then cars are coming from Northwest Point Way. You know what a stupid man did? Overtook. And the man on the bicycle with the baby. Sterling, I nearly had a heart attack when I jumped up, and I should have really took that. But you see, when something happened like that, something got, but I think they need speed bumps here. They got here at 30 miles an hour, but right here now has become a little district how it used to be in the days gone by. We got about 4 or 5 restaurants. We got the 24-hour store that's open. We got Subway. We got all that. People are walking. And I mean to tell you, these people have no respect.
Yeah, a lot of pedestrians, a lot of people walking now like how we used to do way back when, right? Riding their bicycles, and they just driving their cars like you see the space shuttles.
Yeah, man. I mean, something we the God, but then what the police do? We know they're not doing nothing because some of these police see them and they don't do them because some of them come from their country. And let me tell you something, some bad driver, and I can tell what country they're from, you know. I don't have to look at, I've been several countries and I know how several of them drives. So they can't fool me. I've been Jamaica, I've been Honduras, I've been Trinidad, I've been Barbados. I know. And I can tell, oh yeah, I can tell what country is. And another thing, Sterling, is the nastiness I see some of them do. I mean, out the back of Miramala Drive, that's why everything around here is blocked off because the nastiness. And they're not Caymanians. They are not Caymanians.
But we all live in here, you know. So what happens here affects us here.
Everybody, yeah. I mean, I think they need to put by that church there, no loud music, and nobody, or to put glass on the wall. They can't sit down because you put glass on the wall, they're not sit down. And I think the luxury that they have in there is what causing all that. I've seen the back of that church sometime. It's a disgrace. People are there. People are buried in their graves. But even them don't have rest no more, Sterling, because I see them up on top of the people's graves and all like that. Come on now. What is this country coming to? We would never live like that. Well, Caymanian people not nasty. Some of the homes may be poor, but they're clean inside. Caymanian people are very clean. You might find one or two that is not, but the majority of us is clean. And it has to stop, but we need to stand up to our politicians. Now, Sterling, I don't see any politician come in and look for me. So I wonder if they come in there when you get in 2021 to look for that little X. Because, Sterling, you can't go to their office, you don't find them, you don't see them. But how come you can see them then? That's a question I need you to ask me. How come you see some of them only election time and you never see them during the year? Can you answer that?
Maybe they're very busy doing the work of the country in that time.
Work of which country? If we were doing the work of this country, we wouldn't have so much havoc in it now. Oh, Sterling, don't tell me that. A Galloway and someone, but they really need. There are some who do work, and there are some who don't do anything. There are some there for the big paycheck. I'll tell you what, Sterling. If somebody in West Bay South don't run, I'm not voting. Because I'm not going out there to cast the vote for a politician who you can't see. And I mean that. I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
But election is a long way away, so you'll got to see them.
Well, here it is. We need a change out in the South. And I tell you what, I can tell you something. This election, a lot of people not make it in. There are going to be a couple. And there are going to be some that not. Because you know why? People are waking up. All the old people now are dying off. And you know who coming in? My generation, the young ones, the 18 and the 21 go up. They're the ones I want to see. You might see them. You might see them 2025. That will be the next election after 2021, right? I think so.
Yeah. Well,
just see a big change that election. These young people, let me tell you something. They are not for some of the things that are going on. And they're going to run. And they're going to get in.
But maybe you should run.
Me, I run my mug, that's about all. No, I'm in my business costume, and even that, I have a competition, but I give that up now too.
Mm.
And you know why? I come and look for you now, and I call it.
Yeah, but let me ask you then, because you're like many, but unlike many, you're willing to speak. But you see a lot that happens in our community. Yeah. Why is it that we're not doing anything about some of these things? The nastiness they refer to as speeding. I mean, we're not just asking the police or the authorities, but it has to be an ask of us as citizens not to be so tolerant of this behavior, not be so accepting.
Can we do citizens arrest? You see, that might be something that they need to bring in when we see this kind of thing, do citizens arrest.
But before we get to that point, I mean, is there not something else that we could do?
We can do. I can tell you what, someone might see here shouldn't be here. Stop those permits and teach our Caymanians how to work and give them work to do. Yeah.
All right, man. Well,
you have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
And I'll be calling you shortly.
Yes, please.
Call you.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
All right.
I will give you much big news.
All
I promise you. Okay?
Thank you, Mom.
Have a good day.
You too. Take care. Let's take some more calls. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Doreen. How are you?
Very blessed and thankful. How about yourself?
Oh, same.
Amen.
Very thankful myself. Yeah, I want to agree with Reba about the speed, especially here on the Church Street here in West Bay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's ridiculous. And what she said about somebody overtaking her on the left, I had that did to me as well.
Wow.
I had that did to me. I was pulling out. I put on my indicator. I looked right. I looked left. I looked right. I looked left. Seen everything was clear, and I pulled out. And there he comes behind me. And the gentleman that was coming behind him stopped. Because, you know what he done? He got out of his car and cussed me all kind of dirty words.
Jeez.
And the gentleman stopped and said to me, he said, "Miss, you was in the right." But he said, you know what happened to him? He was speeding because he said he overtook me. And he said, that's why he said he got it and started to cuss you to make it look like it was you. But it wasn't your fault. Because he says he overtook me in that speed. Can you imagine?
On that little road
in the morning.
You see that? Yeah, boy. It makes it dangerous, man.
Yeah.
What do we do about it, though?
I don't know. I think the Republic will have to cut down on this. Because here it says 30. I go as walking in the morning, or usually morning or evening. And on the fire drive up there, I walk up there and go across by the bypass, then take the bypass. And it's the same thing. I mean, they're just flying and going, where are they going to?
Yeah, man. It seems to be getting worse recently.
It's just getting worse and worse, like piracy by the minute.
Yeah.
You know? So,
well,
I don't know what we're going to do, I guess. I mean...
And apparently we've increased the speed limit now by all the schools. One of the neighbours in the area, well, a couple of them have shared with me that the speed limit is now 30. It used to be 25 by the primary school. Now it's 30.
Oh, so why did it do that? Because, I mean, people is, always going across there with children and stuff like
Constantly, every day.
I think that should have been left as it was, because I think that was 15 or something like that. That means I know coming down Hill Road, going back up to the school. Yeah. I used to see that there.
Yeah, boy, I guess
I don't know what we can do, right?
Yeah, well,
but I guess they have to try to, listen to us and try to get something done before it's too late.
I hope
for
so
somebody
too.
to get killed before or something. I mean, people is constantly walking, people is cycling and stuff on this road. I live on this road and I see it daily. It's a daily thing.
Yeah.
So they needs to do something before something terribly happen.
All right, but just be very careful there, okay?
Yes,
especially when you're walking.
All right. You too. Take care, eh?
God bless.
All
Take
right,
care. Bye-bye.
Okay then. All right then. Bye-bye.
Well, let's take a couple more calls if they're willing to join us. We're willing to listen. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Dwayne.
Hey, how are you, man? How are you?
All right. Dwayne, you remember I talked recently about this vaccine issue and using us as a testing field. A company now get approval to do those tests in Cayman. Imagine a company bringing vaccine to test the vaccine in the Caymanian people. I just read in the Campus website that a company get approval from government. I don't know how the government allowing, to make the Caymanian people a testing field for a vaccine. It don't approve anywhere else. And why they are bringing it to Cayman to test it in the people? I mean, we not animal, in the labs, they bring animals to test, and they are using the people of this country to test in them a vaccine. Why they don't tax it in the American people? Why they don't tax it in the Canadian people? Why they don't tax it in the British people? Why they are taxing it in the testing this vaccine in the Caymanian people?
So they'll use
a shame.
Yeah. Well, here's something I've seen a couple of times, and at first it was a good laugh, but maybe it's pertinent to what you're saying. It says the vaccine should be tested on all the politicians first. If they survive the vaccine, if it's safe.
If they want volunteers, they can take the minister who approve it. If the Minister of Health, Dwayne Seymour, did approve it, he need to be the first one to be tested in the vaccine.
But it wouldn't just be him, right?
Some of his colleagues, the ones who agree with him.
All right,
because
so
this is shame.
From your information now, how soon would this testing be?
They did already get the approval from government.
Yeah. So when would they start?
And it's already written in the Cayman Campus that they are calling in the Caymanian people to volunteer. You imagine? They are calling only for Caymanians to volunteer.
Well, you see the hysteria and the fear that has been instilled in people across the globe. And I think when people's livelihoods and health is challenged and threatened, people want to be safe. So hopefully
they can take those was fighting for gay marriage, including the governor and OC from your radio. They can take them and test in them, please, if they can.
All right, man. Well, keep us posted, man, as you find information out. All the best to you. All right.
Yeah, all of the best, my friend.
Take care. All right, one final call. Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling.
Yes, sir.
How are you?
I balancing,
You sometimes on both legs, huh? How I say?
Looking at immigration reform, campaign finance reform, recall vote, doing that on Dana Warren, and I got two more, but I remember them now, I can take them down. But I call in to say the derivatives of two morning programs this morning, yeah, they would be crossed off for the record.
Right.
Both kind of similar content this morning. And I was, due to the content, I just called in about a young lady that I had a conversation with earlier this morning. And her problem is, this lady is now without a job due to COVID. She was, quote unquote, furloughed from her employment. She's young, a mother of two, a very nice young lady. Can't get a job, and her rent is due. Can't get any action from, the needs assessment and EU type configuration. So she's wondering, what should she do? Can't get a job. There's no job. Furloughed from her job. Nobody from the job called her back to say, well, we're open again. And I think they're open for business. We're open again, and, we're going to look at, see where we can place you, even if, there's a slight downturn in business, or even we don't have any business. We don't have enough business to sustain another member of staff. So I guess we're going to have to call it nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not nice on HR and management on a whole. But anyhow, just calling to find out if there's anything, any agency that this young lady can approach to get help a little quicker than we all know any you can render for her, that she can get some help.
Right. But it's
an emergency type situation.
Yeah, and it's something that, as you share that, and I've heard it a couple of times again this week. Seemingly, government now has expanded its payroll, is hiring additional staff in different areas, and
I remember HF. Yeah, going to tell them.
Yeah, and there was a comment from one of our listeners who said, if we're hiring people, should we not be looking at hiring from within first? Now I haven't inquired, and we see that the job fair the HSA is putting on Friday. There may be opportunities there, but even even if there is another avenue, and in particular if the central government is hiring staff, if they're not all of a particular skill set, maybe we can.
She needs to go to HF. She always worry about the animal on the street and the bird in the ear and things like that.
Well, directed 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. for their recruitment fair on Friday.
But right now,
But right now, praying for someone is great, but sometimes you need to give them something to sustain them right then, right? I really can't think of anything specifically of any agency outside of government even. What?
Yes, besides that, but it's like, they got work within their time frame. And their time frame not suitable to her, and she didn't even realize, to be honest, that she was quite literally fired.
Yep.
Because you see, if they had asked her down at NAU, the Children and Family Services where she went first, she would have said, yeah, but I still work and I just are kind of like laid off for the time being. She is very well and gone.
Yeah, well, seemingly that's, occurring more often. The company is keeping on some staff and letting go to Caymanians. Well,
but you know what I wonder? I wonder if these smart foreign people, because they're smart, not because they're smart, but they use this labor for when often where they come from. It's because they're not so successful where they come from anymore that they come and spread it out down there. But when the premier came out, when he first shut down and said, "Oh well, we're gonna try to help the poor people and the all good things that he should have said, all the good things that he should have said until the greedy people got on his back." But I wonder if something was known, something was said, or that big old legal part, that yellow one, the pretty one. Because I believe that comes out every morning, or at least every Monday morning, and you get that golden seal, and there's nobody got sign, just stamp. Anybody could stamp. If these foreign people who own all the businesses, who run all the businesses, who administrate everything, and who create policy for us every day, I wonder if they just use that good, what we call crisis? Use that good crisis to try to get rid of some more Caymanians off the shelf, and then, say, well, the government is helping us, so, yeah, and we can't see the net of our Negro noses. But I just wonder if something like that went on, because this is not the first person I heard saying that they didn't know they were fired. One that's talking about little rent, but it's not the first one that I hear saying, but I didn't know they had fired me.
And it's something to consider, because from what I'm hearing, it's not just in the hospitality sector, whether we call it the tourism sector, whether it's the restaurants or hotels, but in the financial services, a lot of Caymanians now are being furloughed. That was the word that's being used.
That's another big F word. Hear that?
Yeah. So and
furloughed over, then we would call that on the street.
Yeah, well, maybe that's what some people are saying. The Richmond is here now because there'll be a great divide and division, and they're seeing discord.
No, and I wasn't saying that. I keep telling on it. It is here for some reason.
Well,
they had a group of Caymanians contemplating getting a little regiment going, but I know that would have been small scale and it would be purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
But I know we got all kind of overseas people and all kind of that engaged now in things. I keep telling them it is for something. Don't know what it is. I know that's smart, but it's for something. That's smart enough to see that. You know how I going to balance myself. That's all Caymanians should do, balance. That's all the heck I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Like going to balance myself and call and tell the girl, wait, yeah, go eat test Friday, day after tomorrow.
Yep. I'll try to remember it.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Bye.
Have a good afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. One last quick comment from one of our listeners. Says in relation to the speeding. So what's the solution? So it's put in place a similar law that was put in place for the coronavirus lockdown when people were caught out of curfew timings. Charge them high fees on the speeding tickets and on a prompt basis. Though not waiting months and months to pass for the speeders to go to court. So I'm convinced there are more people on the road with no driver's license than those that have. And I think, judging by just since Saturday to today, and today just half the day for some of us so far, the amount of people who have expressed growing concern at the attitudes and the excessive speed or behaviors, lack of courtesy, attention and the like on the roads, and they just inconsiderate driving, the poor driving habits. We had callers reference people overtaking them on the left, so that means they're going off the side of the road. Some of the roads have wide areas between the designated lane and the bush, this pave. Others don't. We're seeing people driving in certain ways, and to those who live, because of the development, their yards now probably, hopefully fenced, maybe to protect their properties, are finding themselves almost on the road, and yet cars are whizzing by. We see it in Burstry Hill, we see it in Town Hall Road, we're seeing it by the four-way, we've seen it in Prospect, and for the countless numbers now since Saturday alone who have referenced it just to me, I can imagine that it must be of growing concern. Perhaps it isn't a more visible policing presence on patrol, not parked as some have suggested, but just visible driving up and down, making sure. But maybe it is us as the individual driver thinking about our behaviors. Well, please remember that just like when you're a blood donor, the life you save may be your own. If you're driving and you're not paying attention, you're being negligent, maybe you're speeding and you're acting in an irresponsible manner, maybe the life that you caused is not just your own, maybe somebody that means even more to you. So for what it's worth, please don't be offended by it, but if it causes you to stop and perhaps slow down and pay attention, then please take it to heart. Until tomorrow, we invite you to be a part of our discussion. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your calls. And thanks again to our callers who played earlier and continue to support the Seafarers Association. We're glad that we could do a very small part to say thanks to our listeners, but thanks to the Seafarers. Until tomorrow, be blessed.